Hello, I'm Richard Chambers, President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors. I'm pleased to be with you today to have another one of these conversations with internal audit leaders and thought leaders from around the world on the COVID-19 crisis and their perspectives on how internal audit is navigating in this incredible environment. Today, I'm joined by Jenitha John, former Chief Audit Executive at First Rand Bank in South Africa, and recently named CEO designee of the Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors there in South Africa. Congratulations, Jenitha, and welcome to our conversation.
Thank you, Richard. It's always great to chat to you. At the outset, I want to recognize the superb effort that I see happening across the world, specifically being made by IIA Inc., as well as our network in different countries. I enjoy the camaraderie and the sharing of experiences and insights that's taking place globally in terms of what we're experiencing today, and no doubt creating a stronger profession.
Well, no introduction of Jenitha would be complete without also recognizing that she is the Senior Vice Chairman of the IIA and will become the Chairman of the IIA's Global Board upon election in July. Jenitha, you've been sharing with others how important it is to respond to the COVID situation with resilience. What do you mean by that?
Now, Richard, life as we know it is about constant change. And as auditors, we have experienced and we have witnessed how businesses have progressed or they've regressed due to the constant evolving risk landscape. Now, resilience for me is the capacity to achieve your mandate in spite of experiencing setbacks. It's not always a matter of bouncing back. Sometimes it involves bouncing forward. That is, for me, important in terms of adopting a transformational state. So yes, we're faced with major threats as a planet, whether it is climate crisis, whether it's terror attacks, whether it's the pandemic we all are experiencing now. We have to be able to integrate and transform what we know so that we come out tougher from this episode and stronger.
I couldn't agree with you more. You know, the other discussions that I've had with thought leaders in this series is that there's a common theme around the idea of transformational internal audit. One of the constants is that internal auditors must be engaged. What does that transformation mean for you, Jenitha?
Richard, I do hope, and it's my fervent hope, that in the short term, what I've seen happening and what I've heard and what I witness on LinkedIn and the different social media networks, that CAEs or Chief Audit Execs have been busy, and they've been busy with stakeholder communication. They've been engaging with stakeholders. I'm hoping that we have joined crisis response teams and we're sharing our wisdom on the control environment, knowing full well that because of lockdown or stay-at-home orders, that the control environment has changed in organizations. Frameworks have changed. So what we were auditing against is now outdated. So the important aspect is going and working across the three lines, collaborating with the three lines, reperforming a risk assessment review, testing that veracity of the risk register, understanding full well that organizations have changed their risk tolerances as well, and realign that audit plan that we have. Always from an agility and swift perspective to make sure that auditors are able to anticipate that emerging risks and issues that organizations face. Important for me is the reprioritization of audits. Mobilize auditors. No doubt by now, auditors are working remotely. We have experienced challenges with that, access to data. How are we leveraging business tools to actually go ahead with our work and our mandate as internal auditors? Are we having employee touch-based sessions? Are we offering our employees currently during this phase new skills, training, accessibility? How are we motivating our people to perform audits? So important for me, the technology aspect. Transformation would mean reviewing our technology, re-looking at our agility, collaborating with the different stakeholders we have, making sure we're exploiting the talent we have in our audit teams, and still demonstrating the tenacity we have to share our views and challenge the organization as we traverse this journey that we're going through now as auditors.
You're talking about the risks and risk registers. The point that we've had in other conversations is that it seems like every week or two, there's a completely new set of risks that organizations are facing. Right now, there's a lot of conversation about the return to workplace risk. Do you think that there is a clear view of what risks lie out there? And if not, Jenitha, what advice would you give to a chief auditor or someone in internal audit about how to better identify these risks?
Yeah, and to ensure we're not caught by surprise. Now, again, here I maintain, and I love the part that we have this organizational positioning and mandate of internal audit that allows us vast exposure to business intelligence. And if we practice and we use this positioning effectively, I believe this powerful potential must be exploited now. And how do we use this to actually communicate and collaborate with our stakeholders? It's absolutely critical to minimize the negative impacts. We need to demonstrate our understanding of the expectations of different stakeholders during this time. Use our wisdom gleaned over the years to pinpoint changes to the control environment, decide on different communication channels and the frequency of such in terms of what is appropriate for the different audiences we engage with. How do we leverage the 3 lines in the organization, develop scenarios, identify gaps in control? We talk about fraud risk being perpetuated and becoming a lot more susceptible in this episode that we're dealing with now. How do we actually, again, work closely with the fraud management teams in the organization, understanding the cyber risk impacts? One aspect that I think is extremely good for us as auditors at this stage is to educate stakeholders on the impact that this pandemic is having on people, processes, and platforms, both from a risk and opportunity perspective. And that becomes key for us to stay close to the organization. And this means that we've got to have that agile attitude. Mm-hmm. And Richard, you often talk about insight, foresight, hindsight, and I think this is an opportune time for us to actually look at all of that and use all of that to demonstrate the merit and value of internal audit.
Thank you for the great insights. The last question I have is about something I've been writing and talking a lot about in recent years, and I know that you have too. And that's about how internal auditors need to be trusted advisors. Jenitha, I think this environment offers us an almost unprecedented opportunity to demonstrate that acumen. What are your thoughts about how internal auditors can aspire to that level of being a trusted advisor at a time where everyone in the organization is so busy dealing with this crisis? What advice would you give internal auditors about how to stand out and earn and sustain that trust?
No doubt. I mean, across all 3 lines, you've got regulators, you've got governing bodies, etc., dealing with different imperatives, all to do with sustainability of organizations. And at this stage, many organizations are looking at financial sustainability and reassessing where they stand from a going concern perspective, etc. From an internal audit perspective, the important aspect is to reinvent a value-driven scorecard. And I know auditors have struggled in terms of how do you define what is the value proposition. And sometimes these dynamics are different, whether you're sitting in different geographies, different industry sectors, etc. But the imperative is to define what it means from your perspective, sitting in an organization and understanding your goals and objectives of your organization. Now, for me, a value-driven scorecard is to ensure that you understand your stakeholder expectations, you pair it with the organization, you recalibrate those expectations, you establish governance protocols. You constantly ask to be included in aspects, whether there's going to be retrenchments, layoffs in organizations, etc. Internal audit needs to be at the table because it does have an impact on the control environment. You need to transform again as auditors. And most importantly for me is that collaboration across 3 lines, that ability to integrate, align, and leverage assurance activities becomes absolutely key. Making sure that you have implemented things like combined assurance in your organizations, talking to the specialists in organizations. And we hear the word agile extremely often. What does it mean for agile, for being agile? Is to have that agile attitude, to have a work plan that's agile, leveraging data analytics, looking at robotic process analysis, looking at artificial intelligence, and infusing that mindset change in the audit team to foster continuous learning. So that value-driven scorecard is extremely important. And the only way you do it is by talking to your counterparts in the organization and being paired and in tune, as our current chairman instills, is being in tune with the organization.
Great advice. Thank you, Jenitha, for joining us today. I know you're excited about the year ahead.
It's an absolute pleasure, Richard. And my wish for all now is to be innovative, to show courage, collaborate, embrace an agile attitude, and be insightful, not just for your professional life, but also for our families and our communities. And in that way, we leave a stronger legacy for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm Richard Chambers, President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors.